significant presence throughout this entire gathering.
Absolutely. It's exciting that it's about to happen. We're about to see this week unfold. And just some more background for our viewers. The World Meeting of Families is typically the largest gathering of Catholic families.
It truly is. Now, this year it's a little bit different because of the COVID pandemic.
Right.
People aren't traveling. I think there's only 2,000 families that are coming. But that's
right.
2,000 families. That could be 4, 5, 6 people to a family. So who knows? But 2,000 families is a limited number. This is a great event started by St. John Paul II to bring Catholic families together, because family is really at the heart of society. It's the pillar of society, and it's the heart of the church.
Yes, this is the 10th one in 28 years since St. John Paul II launched it in 1994. And it is going to be limited. It's going to look different than previous World Meeting of Families. I mean, in the past, some of the papal masses had over 1 million people.
That's right.
It's not going to look that way this year.
No. Well, again, because of COVID. Also, I think Francis wants to have something that's a little more intimate, which is why we're having the Festival of Families in the Paul VI Hall.
Yes.
Again, for the crowd size, he doesn't measure things by attendance. He measures it, I think, by impact and getting his message across.
And with that, we want to give you all a little preview of what to expect at the 10th World's Meeting of Families. Here in Roma, the heart of Catholicism. The 2022 World's Meeting of Families will take place this week. Typically the largest gathering of Catholic families, this meeting will be scaled back, limited to 2,000 families in person due to COVID concerns. The coronavirus already delayed this meeting by 1 year. The last one was in Ireland in 2018. The 10th World's Meeting of Families will kick off Wednesday with what's known as the Festival of Families, with Pope Francis and Paul VI Hall. From the Pope to Pop. The opera trio Il Volo will perform and share the stage with their own families. 5 families will then share their personal testimonies on topics ranging from forgiveness to the call to holiness in the face of tragedy. The Holy Father will then give a speech, and the Diocese of Rome's choir will perform the official hymn of the meeting. Thursday and Friday will be packed with speakers and panels, people coming together from across the globe, highlighting the needs of the family today. It will all be centered on the meeting's theme, family love, a vocation and a path to holiness. Saturday will begin with Eucharistic adoration, followed by a discussion of paths of holiness in family life, with a special focus on married saints. It's only fitting then that the heavenly patrons of the event are Blessed Luigi and Maria Beltrame Quattrochi, the first married couple to be beatified together by the Catholic Church in the presence of their children. The couple was married right here in Rome in 1905. On Saturday evening Rome time, Pope Francis will then offer the main Mass in St. Peter's Square. The papal Mass is often the largest event of the meeting. And it will all conclude Sunday, when the Holy Father leads everyone in an Angelus prayer, also in St. Peter's Square. It will be a full week in Rome focused on the family, with the goal to help all families across the globe for years to come. There is a lot to look forward to this week, and I know I'm looking forward to speaking with our next guest right now. Archbishop Salvatore Cordileone from the Archdiocese of San Francisco joins us. Your Excellency, thanks for taking the time to speak with us.
You're welcome. Good to be with you.
And you are leading the U.S. delegation here at the World's Meeting of Families. What is your main focus, your main mission this week?
The main mission, of course, is to participate in the activities here at the World Meeting of Families. We have some wonderful presenters, and I think to build up a sense of community among us in the U.S. delegation. We have a large group of from all over the country, so it's a good representation. Bishops, the priests involved in family life ministry, married couples and families. So we have a good representation. So I think to build up a sense of cohesion among ourselves and hopefully to come away with some ideas. Our staff has been very proactive with this. They put a booklet together for us with reflection questions based on each of the presentations, so we can exchange ideas among ourselves and bring ideas back home with us.
I think it's just wonderful that the church has this World Meeting of Families. So often we tend to focus, when we speak about vocations, on priest and religious, but that marriage is a vocation to holiness in itself. And especially back in the United States, there's a lot of confusion right now now just about the nature of marriage. And I mean, how do you think this might help the delegation and Catholics in America just really live in a culture that is somewhat hostile to marriage in many ways?
I think about both the experience of the ancient people of Israel and then the bookends of the gospel. You know, there are people set apart, but they're also a light to the Gentiles. And so the gospel likewise begins with an invitation to come follow me, come apart for a while. But then at the end, he sends them forth. So we need times to come apart and be together to sort of re-energize ourselves, you know, re-energize the batteries and kind of confirm with clarity what we know is true, so we can then go back out and evangelize with the truth of the beauty of God's plan for marriage.
Absolutely. We'll all be sent on a mission afterwards. You know, we come together, we're re-energized, as you said, and going on a mission. I can't help but reflect on the fact that today is the feast of St. Thomas More, who quite literally lost his life for defending the sanctity of marriage and for refusing to redefine what marriage is. What can we learn from him today here in 2022, especially in this month of June, when we do see so many attempts to redefine what marriage is?
He certainly paid the highest price.
Yes.
So he is a message to us of the courage that we need in the face of a hostile culture. That the consequences we face are near having our being beheaded, like him, and being kept in a prison. Who knows, that might happen someday, but right now it's not as severe, but it's felt nonetheless, and it does require courage. So I think we need to take inspiration from saints such as Thomas More and John Fisher, the one bishop who remained loyal to Rome through all of that, to take inspiration from their courage and realize that these were great men of the church, but we're all capable of that. We're all capable of that kind of loyalty to Christ and to his truth, even though we might have to suffer hostile consequences for it. But it's the path to holiness.
Yes.
One of the things we've been asking, especially when we have clerics come on, is how did your own family, you know, because family, we all have families. We all came from a family. How did your own family help you to discern your vocation to the priesthood, and what role did they play?
That's a good way to put the question, because there wasn't any sort of explicit encouragement to me. It was just simply the experience of growing up in a family that was united, and with an extended family that was united. I can't say it was ideal, but it was positive. You know, we always knew the family would be together. And not just my immediate family, but again, the extended family. My father's parents lived next door. My mother's parents were 3.5 miles away, and all of our cousins were nearby. So the extended family was together all the time. So there's this great sense of stability and family unity and desire to be together as a family. And then certain customs, spiritual customs woven into that, our devotion to St. Joseph from our kind of Sicilian roots, the regular practice of the faith. All of that kind of, I think, wove together to move me to consider a vocation to priesthood.
You know, there's so much of that has been lost, and especially among young Catholics, you know, because of the high divorce rate in the United States. What can priests, bishops do to help encourage that kind of stability and that kind of atmosphere in a family, to help families grow not only in holiness, but also to help their children to grow in holiness and to be good members of the church and society?
That's exactly what we're looking at here in the United States. So this World Media to Families is very timely, as the USCCB just issued this National Pastoral Framework for Marriage and Family Life called The Joy of Love, which is, again, it's a framework, so it's kind of a model for different dioceses to use as a tool to make their own more specific plans, but it focuses on accompaniment. Of course, this great theme of Pope Francis, we need to accompany couples, but early on, and we need to start earlier on educating them in our schools and in our faith formation programs about what marriage is and why this makes so much sense. And then when they're being the immediate preparation to be with them up to and then after marriage too, those years after marriage are so critical that too often they sort of are abandoned, you know, and there's no logical community for them to fit in. Once their children are school age, then yes, they're with other parents. But so we need to be accompanying them up to and after the time of their wedding.
That's true, accompaniment as well. You know, here we are in Rome, but back in the United States, and we're, you know, all from the U.S. Back in the United States, we're awaiting a Supreme Court decision, which is imminent, on Dobbs versus Jackson's Women's Health Organization. How significant is this moment that we're in right now, especially because abortion is directly an attack on the family?
Absolutely, it is. And it shows that if we realize the sanctity of life in the womb, it changes everything, our whole worldview, because this is a human life that deserves to be welcomed. So we have to rally around the woman. We have to call the father to responsibility. The best thing to do for their child is a mother and a father in a low conflict, stable relationship. That's marriage. So everything, if we recognize the dignity of life in the womb, everything falls into place. If we deny it, then all kinds of destruction happens. And this is why I think those on the other side of the issue from us are so vehement about it, because I think they instinctively sense that the whole myth of the sexual revolution falls if we recognize the dignity of human life in the womb.
I think one theme we'll be discussing throughout this week is how to accompany people, welcome people, but without compromising truth, being merciful without compromising truth. And I'll be honest with you, when I was reflecting on that, one example that came to mind was your Roses and Rosary fasting campaign for House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, because she has been this major proponent in advancing abortion. Can you speak about why that campaign in particular was so important to you?
I think with our Catholic politicians in particular, somehow being Catholic is important to them. So there's something to tap into. There's a spiritual force to tap in there. And we need to use our spiritual weapons to do so, right? These resources that we have of prayer and fasting, these kind of sacrifices, to touch the hearts of our Catholic politicians to come home to the fullness of their faith. This really is a spiritual battle. We all know this. It's a spiritual battle. So we have to gauge on the spiritual level of prayer, rosary especially, adoration, fasting, other acts of penance, the sacrament of penance, regular confession. All of these spiritual tools we need to use in this spiritual battle that we're involved in.
Absolutely.
Excellency, I'm just want, as one priest, just thank you for your leadership on this point. For priests, a lot of priests are in a difficult position because, different bishops have different opinions on how to address this very thorny issue for a lot of people. And you've been such a leader on pushing the spiritual resources that we have and using, appropriate disciplines that are medicinal, in fact, medicinal. So I suspect that takes a lot of courage. And I'm certain you've gotten a lot of pushback, from various quarters, and I know that's difficult, but I speak as, I think for many priests, just grateful for you for that.
Okay, well, thank you for that. There's been some pushback, but a lot of support. People don't realize the widespread support there is for these basic moral goods. So I've gotten a lot of messages of thanks and support.
That's good to hear.
We are grateful for your clarity, and we are grateful for you taking the time to be with us. Archbishop Cordileone, thank you so much. And with that, we're going to continue our coverage of the 10th World Meeting of Families right after this break. We'll see you then.
Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. Amen.
You had the chicken tenders, and you had the walleye fingers.
Hey, we forgot something.
You're right. In the name of the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit, amen. Bless us, O Lord, and these thy gifts which we are about to receive from your bounty through Christ our Lord. Amen.
Jesus said to love others as we love ourselves. So he's presuming that we love ourselves. He wants us to believe that we're actually lovable. So what stops you from believing that about you? Lies about our worth tend to slip into our minds in a million different ways. Abuse tells you you're violated. Bullying tells you you're weak. Lack of affirmation tells you you're not enough. Gossip tells you you're defined by your worst mistake. Stop reciting those lies to yourself. Listen, God thinks you're worth dying for. And if you disagree with him about your worth, you know which one of you is wrong? You have a role to play in the battle that's happening between your ears. When you start replaying those old lies to yourself, I'm all washed up, I'm worthless, I'm weak, I'm dirty, replace those lies with your true identity. Out loud if you have to. I am blessed, I'm beautiful, I'm chosen, I'm a child of God, I'm loved, I'm enough to die for. That's who you are.
Welcome back to EWTN's coverage of the 10th World's Meeting of Families. We're here in St. Peter's Square, and in just a little bit, the Festival of Families is about to kick off, which is the official kickoff event for the World Meeting of Families. A lot to look forward to. Really grateful to speak with Archbishop Cordileone. And Matthew, you had a thought about what he mentioned on the spiritual tools necessary.
Well, I did. It's important to stress again, though, feast day of St. Thomas More, St. John Fisher.
Yes.
The heroic nature of Archbishop Cordileone as he's leading Catholics right now in proclaiming life in every phase of our political lives and our personal lives. And to that, I think his comments on providing spiritual tools, and that's something I think that the World Meeting of Families can do and has throughout its long history, providing those tools to take back with them into their own family lives, but then helping other people have them.
And I think it'll be fascinating to hear in the different presentations and panels and speakers and guests what those tools are and how they vary from country to country. I mean, there will be representatives and families from 120 countries all coming together here in Rome.
It's the universality of the church, also the universality of the domestic church.
Yes.
And to see that brought here, each family is going to have its own story.
Yeah.
What got them here, but also what they do to live in the world today under very difficult and unique circumstances wherever they happen to be. There are families that will never face persecution, at least in the horrible forms of martyrdom that we're seeing. But we're also seeing families faced with challenges from the secular world and the secular culture.
Yes. You know, before the Festival of Families kicks off, I just want to ask you both, what are you most looking forward to this week?
I think just this, to seeing all these families come by and come through, see how they sort of bond and come to each other and come closer to Jesus Christ and learn from each other. I mean, I think this point about all these cultures coming here, there are a lot of wonderful familial traditions and customs that we Americans don't know about. And so it's going to be wonderful to hear those and to see those.
I'm slightly biased. I love music, so the joy of music is going to be one of the presentations here that we're going to be at the Lateran Museum.
Right.
In fairness, though, I think Pope Francis, there has been so much, frankly, wild speculation about him and whether his resignation is imminent or anything like that. To see him, we don't know how long Pope Francis has as Pope. No Pope does. So to then understand that his teachings here, what he has to say is going to be important. He's setting his mark. He's leaving his mark on this World Meeting of Families and those going forward.
His legacy and his thumbprints all over
That's
it.
right.
And as you mentioned earlier, he was right here at the general audience this Wednesday. What did he say today? And did that give us any little preview or insight into what we can expect to hear at the World Meeting of Families?
Well, I think he did. He has been focused for weeks on a catechesis of old age. And it's a body of teachings now. To sort of use it loosely, if John Paul II gave us the theology of the body, Pope Francis has given us sort of the theology of the aging body.
Yes.
But that is something that is very much in his mind and something that he wants to impart. He had some great quotes today. I know, Father, you saw a few.
Well, one, for instance, I know that he speaks a lot about not being envious of the young. You know, that with age obviously comes wisdom. And that those who are aged should, in wisdom, help to welcome the young and not to be threatened when the young take their place, you know, but to sort of take their leave with a smile and graciousness. They've earned it at that point. And it's interesting when you think about him talking about aging, especially as we see him aging, especially these last few months in a sort of accelerated rate, it seems. Now, he's using a wheelchair now.
Well, and Pope Francis had another line today that old age is a farewell. It is slow, he said, but it is a farewell.
Wow.
And he said it is a proclamation, I have lived.
Wow.
and to lean into that old age and the toll it takes on you, but then also to understand the wisdom that it can bring, but then also to create a family environment that actually treasures old age.
And it seems like that will be a reoccurring theme this week, the young and the old coming together and what we can learn from each other. We have a lot more to say about that, but we're going to go to our next break, and when we return, we'll have our next guest. Stay with us.
There was no single event. It was more gradual. Eventually you just don't go one Sunday and then you don't go 2 Sundays in a row. Then went through a divorce and ended up being a single parent. If I didn't have church or God, I would be back at that lonely stage, that trouble stage. Whenever you get anxious and worry about things, you just know that Jesus has it under control.
If you've been away from the Catholic Church for any reason, visit CatholicsComeHome.org.
I was born at the end of the 20th century into a generation on whom has been placed the burden of a culture of debt. This was a century that saw unprecedented prosperity for some and unspeakable torment for the rest, wars on a never-before-seen scale, the pollution of our skies and oceans, a barren economic landscape, and the wholesale murder of hundreds of thousands of human beings without even a name to place on the tombstones they were never given. And every day I'm told that myself and my peers are the world's future. The world turned its back on God for 100-some years, and when the last of them that haven't yet given into apathy die, then the world will become our responsibility. Against odds so slim in circumstances so desperate, there is but one source of hope. We will turn to God and welcome Him back, and the whole world will see the difference it will make.
Lord Jesus Christ, Shepherd of souls, who called the apostles to be fishers of men, raise up new apostles in your holy church. Teach them that to serve you is to reign, to possess you is to possess all things. Kindle in the hearts of our people the fire of zeal for souls. Make them eager to spread your kingdom upon earth. Grant them courage to follow you who are the way, the truth, and the life, who lives and reigns forever and ever. Amen.
Welcome back to EWTN's coverage of the 10th World's Meeting of Families. I'm really grateful to be joined by 2 friends and our next guests, Mary Rose and Ryan Verrett, the founders of Witness to Love and presenters at the World Meeting of Families tomorrow.
Yes.
Welcome to Rome.
Thank you.
What an exciting week. Tell us a little preview of what your presentation will be on tomorrow.
Well, it's on motherhood and fatherhood. And the title of the panel is Accompanying Motherhood and Fatherhood. And our talk is We Need Mothers and Fathers. And everybody keeps coming up to us and saying, that's an interesting talk title they gave you. What is it about?
But it seems pretty clear, the importance of motherhood and fatherhood.
Yes,
and it's important to be reiterated today.
Yeah, and when we were asked to speak about motherhood and fatherhood, I mean, it was... Obviously, we thought about it before in the past, but to really just kind of focus on that at a level to share in this type of audience. But we're not perfect in any way, but just from a father's perspective, I was praying and asking, like, what is the main, theme that would come up in something like this? And for me, at least, it became presence. Like this, and many other dads have said that the most important thing about being a father today is just being present to your children. Wow. And it's such an important task. I know there's thousands of things we can talk about, but that was just one of the major things that came up.
It's like, where do you even begin? Yeah. And I can't, speaking of, the presence of fatherhood and motherhood, I can't help but think of COVID and the coronavirus pandemic. And a lot of families were forced to spend a lot of time together in quarantine. And I wonder if that really shook up and woke people up to the reality that they weren't spending enough time with their children.
I think a lot of families during that time, they spent more time with their spouse and their kids than they had really ever done. Right. And for some families, that was a difficult thing. It wasn't what they thought it would be. Other families, it was just a whole new perspective on life, where they, either changed careers or everything just so they could be more present to each other as a family. So, the presence that Ryan is talking about, it's not possible for every parent to kind of give to their kids what they know their kids need, or what they know there's something missing if in their lives growing up. They didn't have that presence or that example or that witness. And so really for us, an important part of our talk is really our ministry, is that mentorship. You can't give what you haven't received.
And I would love to speak about that because I know marriage and the family are so important to you both. Obviously, as a married couple who has 5 children, but also through your ministry, Witness to Love. For our viewers who are not familiar with it, can you give a quick summary of your ministry?
Witness to Love is actually an authentic catechumenate approach to marriage formation. So for young people or old people engaged who are getting civilly married, and for the mentors that they choose. And so it's at first and primarily it's a relational experience of kind of Christ through the sacrament of marriage, and for mentors sharing that with younger couples.
And that's a critical part of it, the mentorship relationship, isn't it?
Yes, and what's unique about Witness to Love and different than any other marriage formation approach is that we see that it's critically important that engaged couples choose someone that they admire to walk with them, to accompany them before and after the wedding day. And so it's an ongoing transformation for both couples, and we're able to walk with them. And I think so much in the world today, it's virtual, it's online, it's you're walking with people you don't know, and it doesn't continue.
And this is critical, just the high divorce rates that we know that we have. This is critical to meet couples before they get married and help to strengthen that bond and relationship. Now, I'm so grateful for both of your work, and I'm looking forward to watching your presentation tomorrow. God bless you both, and enjoy your week at the World's Meeting of Families. Mary Rose and Ryan Verrett with Witness to Love.
Thank you.
Thank you, Catherine.
Thank you, and we'll continue our coverage right after this break. Stay with us.
St. Vincent de Paul was born in France to a poor peasant family on April 24, 1581. Growing up, he was educated by the Franciscan friars and was ordained a priest in 1600. St. Vincent helped to reform clergy and prepare men for the priesthood through spiritual retreats and trainings. He traveled all over Europe preaching and serving the poor, and he established hospitals and evangelized to convicts. He founded a religious community of priests known as the Vincentians, as well as the Ladies of Charity, a lay institute of women. He also co-founded the Daughters of Charity, all of which serve the sick and the poor. He died on September 27, 1660, at the age of 80 in Paris. He was canonized on June 16, 1737 by Pope Clement XII. The St. Vincent de Paul Society, a Catholic organization dedicated to serving the poor, was established after his death in 1833. He is the patron saint of charities and horses. St. Vincent de Paul, pray for us.
Welcome back to EWTN's coverage of the World Meeting of Families. I'm Catherine Hadro, joined by Dr. Matthew Bunson and Father Thomas Petrie, as we now await the Festival of Families, which should begin any moment. In a few minutes, we're awaiting that event, and we'll bring that straight to you. And this is the official kickoff event of the World Meeting of Families. But Matthew, what is the Festival of Families?
Well, the Festival of Families is, as you say, it's a kickoff event. But what it really is a series of testimonials from families from all over the world. Some discourses by the Holy Father. I think we're all looking forward to that, as we've discussed, with musical interludes and other presentations. When you think of a Festival of Families, you think of like children doing things.
Right.
This is a little more sedate.
Okay.
And the testimonials, I think, are important because what they're trying to do is to set the stage with these individual families of here are the conditions and here are the challenges that families face in the modern world today.
That will be interesting to hear the talks, a little preview of what we can expect. And the theme for this week and this year of the World Meeting of Families is family, love, a vocation, and a path to holiness. And I think that will be interesting to hear, how do people discern their vocations, whether that's marriage, consecrated life, religious life, and how did their families play a role in that?
Well, I remember yesterday we had, Bishop Hein from Madison, and we also had Paul Johansson, and and hearing even Archbishop Cordileone, I love hearing stories how people were raised and what their families did to make God real for them, to give them a culture of Catholicism within the family, so that the church is not simply a building that you go to on Sundays, but is in fact the way you live your life.
That's right.
You know, and that's hard to do in families, but I don't know that it's needs to be difficult, right? It's making God present in prayer, having images around, and talking about the faith.
And those paths to holiness, those paths to making God real, are the ways that we can then confront and deal with the real and often terrible challenges of life.
That's absolutely right. I think,
Yes.
you know, this all goes back to, you know, the Second Vatican Council, but even before then, that the fact that lay people have their own call to holiness. And it doesn't look the way a priest call to holiness or a religious call to holiness. You know, I said this yesterday, I'm going to say it again. I think marriage is a very difficult and hard vocation. It's because it's not my vocation. But at the same time, it's different in the sense that holiness comes to the married person in the ordinary events of life, changing diapers, taking out the trash, paying bills, you know, and having to make those kind of personal sacrifices of, you know, the more your life is not your own, which children force. You know, when you have children, a parent's life, it's no longer about them, it's about the children.
That's right. And vocation truly is a calling. It's a very specific calling that everyone needs to discern for themselves. And it's also, a vocation is a cross. You know, marriage is such a gift, and it's, you know, the biggest blessing in my life. But marriage is a cross. Every vocation is a cross.
Well, and Father, you said something that I want to pick up on, and that's the importance of understanding how extraordinary in the ordinariness of life.
Yes.
How the gifts of marriage, how the grace of marriage can actually fortify you for those moments of great tragedy, but also those sort of mundane daily things where your spouse can drive you crazy.
Well, that's right. And, you know, I think Catherine's right. Yes, there is sacrifice and a cross in every vocation. So often when I'm helping young people discern, say in spiritual direction, whether they usually come to me because they think they're called to religious life, right? Or to the priesthood. But occasionally I do get people who come to me because they are in fact called to marriage. And the notion of sacrifice can be misunderstood in this regard. It's often thought, well, my vocation, it's a sacrifice. I'm just going to have to suck it up. It's a sacrifice. That's not what we mean by sacrifice. When Christ talks about the grain of wheat that falls to the ground and dies, he says that just remains a grain of wheat. But sacrifice in Christ should bring joy and new life, right? And it's just what you were saying, Catherine. Yeah. Marriage is a cross, but it's also a joy and a life, right? And that's same with my vocation. It brings me life and joy.
And it's out of the love for the other that you're willing and joyful to make sacrifices.
But also the importance of understanding the cross properly in our lives.
That's right. You know, that the cross is not an end in itself. That's an important point of the Gospels. The cross is not an end in itself. It's a means to the end. It's the means of our sanctification. It's the means of our justification. And then it leads always to the resurrection, always to life and joy in God.
That's a great reminder, and I think even for everyone, different seasons that come in vocation. I look at my friends who are new parents, and maybe their prayer life looks different than it used to. Maybe they don't have the time to spend an hour in adoration every day and go to daily mass, but their prayer can be doing the dishes. You know, they can use their actions as prayer as well.
Well, there's a reason why Therese of Lisieux is a doctor of the Church. As John Paul II, in naming her one, that little way of how we do the smallest act and try to use that to sanctify ourselves, but also to sanctify the act.
Yes.
And in proclaiming her a doctor of the Church, you know, John Paul II openly admitted many people are going to ask, why is this person a doctor of the Church when all she left was so little?
She's so hidden.
So hidden, and we have very little in terms of her.
That's
we have
true.
the book, obviously. But there's the lesson of Therese in our daily lives, and it has, even though as a member of the religious community, as a Carmelite, she offers so much to couples who can do the same thing in their own state of life.
I'm so glad you brought her up, Matthew, because she's been in the back of my mind, and she's always in the back of my mind when we talk about the holiness of the laity and their vocation in the world, because we tend to think that the universal call to holiness was invented by the Second Vatican Council. It most assuredly was not. I mean, that has always been a teaching of the Church, even if during certain centuries it wasn't as popularly known, right? And so once you have St. Therese and the little way, and how quickly her teaching on that became popular throughout the world, you end up by the early 20th century already having all sorts of Catholic guilds and Catholic lay associations and Catholic marriage movements. And I'm thinking about our patrons, Luigi and Maria Quadrocchi. I mean, they were really involved in that sort of work and with those kinds of associations.
And we can go to Francis de Sales, another saint, doctor of the Church, Introduction to the Devout Life, stressing that there is this universal call to holiness. He didn't use those exact words, but the idea that everyone, from the greatest king to the bishops to the popes to the cardinals, all the way down to the shepherds, are all called to be holy. And that argument, too, that he made, that if you think you were trying to excise prayer and holiness from your daily life because you're not in a convent, well, that's a heresy.
There was something that Catherine said earlier that I was really grateful to hear from a young married person, which is, because I deal with this sometimes in spiritual direction with folks, you know, that young couples and a young parent feeling like somehow they're letting God down because they cannot make the hour, because they have been so devoted to an hour adoration a couple times a week. And then the first child comes along, and suddenly that slips away, and you can feel like, oh my, I'm gypping God of His time. But no, that's your vocation is to be the mother and be the father of that infant that, look, needs 24/7 attention, and you're honoring God in that way.
Absolutely.
But generationally, we are seeing changes in the families. We're seeing the new challenges that families are having. And the importance then for the World Meeting of Families, for Episcopal conferences, for the attendees here to go home and bring what we hope will be this wisdom back, especially in things like mentoring couples, providing that guidance.
Well, and I think we can expect, when we think about what Pope Francis is going to say, or we think about the mandate that he's going to give families. We know Pope Francis. We know the sorts of things he says, right? And his sort of agenda with the lay faithful. He's very strong on that.
And very straightforward a lot of times. And, you know, and in his classic Pope Francis way. And again, just for our viewers to know, we will be hearing from Pope Francis today at the Festival of Families. We're waiting for that to begin. And you know, in a few minutes now, so stick with us in our coverage. But I love that we're talking about, you know, all these different vocations, and that you mentioned the Quadrocchi family, because they are the heavenly patrons. We'll be speaking about them at length tomorrow, but can you give a little snippet of who this family is?
Well, this was a seemingly, I wouldn't say nondescript, because they're pretty extraordinary, but seemingly average Italian family in the early 20th century. One died in the 1950s, the other in the 1960s, modern saints then, who found in their marriage a true domestic church. Both of them were incredibly active in the life of the faith, who changed countless lives by simply living the faith every day. In living the faith under ordinary circumstances, but in an extraordinary way, in the perfection of the virtues in their own pursuit of holiness.
Yes, and I love that. There will be a special emphasis this week on married saints. And again, the Quadrocchi family, they're blesseds at this stage, I believe. And I believe one of their daughters is a venerable, even. So again, what a holy family. We see the good fruit come from these parents. And so we'll be focused on that. But I would just, you know, I'd be remiss, Father, if I didn't mention that you walked alongside my husband and I in our marriage prep. Even before we got engaged, you walked alongside us, and don't mind the fly that's joining us here for our coverage.
This is what happens when you have a white habit. You know? No, well, no. Let's pray that it same happens to us. You know, holiness runs in packs. We know this.
I was just about to ask you about that.
Yeah, holiness runs in packs, and so I try to form as many people as I can and get as many people as I can active and more faithful to Jesus Christ, so they can pray for me. You know, so it's a little self-interested.
There's your ulterior motive.
Self-interested here. But the thing is, I mean, being able to walk with a couple in marriage preparation, like I did with you and Matt, and then to see that through all the way to the wedding, and what a joyful time it was, and not to do that myself. You know, I know we just had the Verets on, and I always involve a lay couple, a sponsor couple, and this time it was for you and Matt. It was John and Claire Grabowski, you know, who actually specialize in mentoring couples and helping married couples to be better, to grow closer to Jesus Christ.
And I found that critical. I know that's a critical part of the Witness to Love program that the Verets have, and they'll be speaking about that tomorrow in their presentation. But, you know, from a very personal level, I do come from a divorced family. There's a lot of divorce in my family. So to meet with a mentor couple beforehand was huge, to have a married couple to look at and ask them very practical questions. I feel like that's a key to all of this. What's the practical day-to-day advice? What are practical ways of holiness that we can grow together as a couple and as a family?
Well, Pope Francis uses a phrase often that's actually one of the catecheses this week, and that is, thank you, forgive me, or pardon, and please.
Yes.
3 basic phrases that he uses in order to emphasize some of the more basic things you have to do in married life. But undergirding all of that is the idea that it's not all about me.
Yes.
That you are together and you are willing to sacrifice yourself for the other. But one other point that I wanted to talk to both of you about, and that is, here we have marriage prep, and the bishops are focusing on marriage prep. But what follows when the couple settles into the reality of marriage seems so crucial.
Well, this is what Catherine was just talking about. There are phases, right?
Yeah.
And then it's wonderful when a married couple has that honeymoon phase, which usually lasts longer than the honeymoon. And some couples don't always get that long of a honeymoon phase. The reality really does settle in quickly.
Right.
But it is important, and this is something Pope Francis has really emphasized. You know, I know Amoris Laetitia gets a lot of attention was paid to that one chapter in Amoris Laetitia that spoke of sacramental questions, but actually the rest of it was really quite good, and he really emphasized the need of the church, of pastors and bishops, to really provide accompaniment to those young couples as you learn how to live with one another, because it's not always roses and chocolates, you know.
Right.
It's really
real life.
Real life, and can be gritty and difficult.
Right, and financial hardships, setbacks, you can be fired, you can have illnesses, the old thing about for better or for worse. And there's this problem now in culture of the commitment phobia, an unwillingness for couples to commit. But that continues often in marriage, which I think is also one of the contributing factors to the levels of divorce. But that's also in part, as a church, something that we have to be very aware of, and working every day as Catholics to help couples understand it is for better or for worse.
Absolutely. Love is a choice. Love is sacrifice. Love is a choice. And each of us have that in our own vocation, you know, whether it's married spouses. And as a priest, I'm sure there are times it's like, really, I have to do this, but the church is your bride.
No, that's right. And, you know, it's this is something priests, we talk about with each other. You know, not for every priest is every aspect of priestly ministry fun or joyful. You know, I'll share with you personally. Like, I find challenging doing hospital visits. You know, or you know, when I've been on a hospital rotation, having to go in from one patient's room to the next room and trying to be comforting and to, you know, usually asking the same questions. How are you? But I love hearing confessions, and I know some priests sitting in the box for 2 hours is not easy, but for me it is very easy. So even for us, there's different aspects in each man of what we do it all, but some things we like to do more than others.
And to have that moment where you discover a couple in crisis, where do you go from there as somebody who's asked by them for help?
Well, it depends on obviously what the crisis is, right? So, but the first thing obviously is to pray with them and to thank God that they've recognized the crisis. Sometimes a crisis is you can't hide it, you know, it smacks you in the face. But sometimes it's can be hidden, and you know, or maybe people don't know it, and that's a salient truth that we don't always know what's going on inside a marriage based on external appearances. But the first thing is to pray, to thank God that they have come for help, and then to move into whatever steps we need to take, who we need to call, who we need to contact to help them move through whatever the crisis is. Right?
And speaking of crisis, we'll be hearing a lot of that from these panelists, from these speakers from across the globe. Again, 120 countries are going to be represented, various speakers speaking, and we're going to hear about different family tragedies, how families overcame them, how they found forgiveness, and that's going to be critical because here's the reality. No family is perfect, and every family will encounter suffering. I know our viewers can relate to that.
Absolutely. Every family, as you say, is going to encounter it in some way.
Yes.
And you have to go into marriage understanding that is going to happen.
Yeah.
Now, there might be couples out there who go 50, 60 years of just pure bliss.
Right.
But I think if you were to ask them, what were your hardships, what were your difficulties, you might be surprised. And Father, you probably encounter this all the time, where couples would actually shock you with what those particular crosses were, what those challenges were.
You know, one of the things we know in America, at least, and there are studies that show this, that most divorces happen for what we would call low conflict reasons.
And with that, we take you now to Paul VI Hall, where the Festival of Families is beginning.
In Vaticano, questa bellissima aula, l'Aula Paolo VI, ospiti di Papa Francesco, a pochi passi da casa Santa Marta, e siamo, devo dire, felici ed emozionati di essere qui non solo come coppia, ma soprattutto come famiglia.
Of the various speakers, whether you're joining us through various Vatican Media channels, the Vatican audio or radio app, the Vatican News web portal or YouTube channel, or via one of our partner stations, including Catholic TV, Catholic Faith Network, EWTN TV at Magishan TV, and Luminous Radio. A very warm welcome, one and all.
To meet Pope Francis and listen.
This year's edition of the World Meeting of Families is being held in dioceses and parishes around the world in a polycentric and widespread format that differs from previous editions of the event. At the same time, more than 2,000 delegates from countries around the world, 120 different countries, have come to Rome for the 5-day event, which aims at highlighting the beauty of marriage and family in today's world. The first event is taking place here in the Paul VI Hall in Rome, in the Vatican, as we mentioned, hosted by Italian media personalities Amadeus and Giovanna, his wife. The World Meeting of Families is going to continue throughout the weekend, culminating in a final Mass celebrated by Pope Francis in St. Peter's Square on Saturday night, with a final mandate to families delivered by the Pope at the Angelus on Sunday. And with that, we'll turn you over to our English language translators, who will translate into English the various parts of today's event.
In joy, but also in troubles and difficulties. And His Holy Father will be shortly with us. But now we have 3 performers, 3 artists that are appreciated in Italy and all over the world. We will get to know their families. Let them come in, accompanied by the orchestra of Marche, conducted by conductor Francesco Grani. With great love, Il Volo.
And we now introduce the Italian musical group Il Volo, accompanied by an orchestra from La Marche.
Every time I close my eyes, the thought of you is everywhere inside my mind. I hear your voice, can't sleep, it keeps me up at night, and I want you always. You breathe life inside of me, give me air and hope, a reason to believe. I want the world to know every single thing about this grande amore. Tell me what's the reason why I only dream of you. Tell me what's the reason why my eyes see only you. Tell me what's the reason why I always believe in you. Grande amore. persi a non dormire, altri a far l'amore, amore, sei il mio amore, per sempre, per me. Dimmi quando penso solo a te, dimmi perché quando amo solo te, dimmi perché quando vivo solo in te, grande amore, dimmi che non mi lascerai mai, dimmi chi sei, resti la me giorni miei d'amore. Non mi sbaglierei mai, dimmi chi sei, che sei il mio unico grande amore, che sei il mio unico grande amore.
Thank you, Gianluca, Ignazio, Piero. Round of applause for the Volo. Thank you guys. I'm so happy to see you again. Beautiful song. Every day I sing it to my wife. Yes, every morning. You're with us during the Volo. No, I can't. Is it a wake-up call? Yes, it's a good idea. We're very happy to be here with our families for the first time all together in such an important event. And it's really very touching and thrilling to share all this with you and with our families. And in fact, we are very curious. Let's meet your family or families of the Volo boys. This is my father, my grandpa, my brother, so all here, my mother, etc. So the grandpa has the same passion. Your name? Ernesto. So you're fond of music. Yes, you come from Abruzzi region. Yes, I played in the band, in the local band for many years. So you always followed your grandson. Yes. So really, he's very good. Yes, I'm very proud of him because he gave me a lot of satisfaction. Very proud. I really want to say, and I invite young people to really have a close dialogue with their families, to have empathy, and tell your family to speak about their past, because we want to rejoice their past with them, with our grandparents, and enjoy their values. Don't neglect your families, especially your grandparents. Good, well said. And who are you going to introduce now? I have the families out with me. My father, Gaetano, so Francesco, Maria Grazia, my sister, and my mother, Eleonora. I'm very thrilled today because I have a close relationship with Faith, and I have a great faith, thanks to my family, and especially thanks to my mother, because every day, and also today daily, she's helping me and encouraging to find myself and never lose faith. So I would like to thank my mother, because she was a beacon of my life. Very beautiful, very beautiful. Ignazio, come, join us. As in Sicily we say, it's up to you. This is my mother. Your name? Caterina. My sister, Nina. She's very thrilled as well because the Holy Father will join us. And so Nina, yes, and my two sons. No, I'm joking. So they're my compass in life. My father looks down on us from heaven, and there is a great difference between loss and absence. I didn't lose my father because he's always with us, and those who leave us are looking at us from heaven. They're always with us. We should remember this. Okay, I would like to ask a question because each of you rightly spoke about his family, the importance of family and the pillars in your family. And Giovanna and me sometimes say, or very often say, that we have the privilege of having been successful in our profession and success as men and women. And this is because family gives us peace of mind. I don't think that things happen just by chance, and people are successful in their activity, in their profession, in their life, is due to the fact that the family is there supporting you when you have ups and downs and give us confidence and peace of mind. Yes, they are the most important figures of our life because it's important that the audience, the listeners, listen to our music. But when you come to the stage, you have to come to the stage through ups and downs, and the family is always there. And I like to imagine that these important figures, these important people, are those who put you back on track, and this is important. But for us, it was very important to have a new family because we, the three of us, are a big family, a second family, and altogether we are the Adams family. Let's put it this way. So Il Volo will be with us because we will have two other songs. Round of applause to their families. Thank you, thank you. Of course, stay with us, stay. And in the days, the following days, we will listen to other stories during the 10th World Meeting of Families, whose title chosen by Pope Francis is Family, Love, Vocation and Way to Holiness, because the strong connection that puts together members of the family, parents and children, grandparents and grandchildren, siblings, brother and sister, husband and wife is the same at any latitude. The family as vocation, as way to holiness means live all life loving each other, respecting each other, and wishing to get all together. Hi, you're looking forward, aren't you? And I have to say that the World Meeting of the Family this year was really something wished by the Holy Father in something atypical. There will be the whole Eternal City that will be the main location, the main venue, and will host delegates coming from all the world, while the bishops will meet with family during the same days to reflect and pray together. Now we're speaking of families. We have special families from Kiev. Yes, Kiev and Ukraine are going through a very dramatic moment, months of anguish, anxiety with this terrible war, an unacceptable conflict that broke apart so many families and wounded so many families. This round of applause is just to show how close we are. We pray for them, we support them, and then now we get in connection with Franceschi, that's for Radio Rai, with Don Pedro Zaffa, a priest of Spanish origin who have been living for a decade in Ukraine and is welcoming parisher looking for help in his church. So here they are. So Francesca, Valeria, Don Pedro, good evening. So thanks to your commitment, many families can be together in this difficult period. Can you please introduce a family? Here from Kiev.
Senz'altro. Allora, intanto
So, first of all, Don Pedro Zafra, Spanish priest who has been spending 10 years in Ukraine and was first line as many priests of this parish in this eastern side of the river crossing Kiev, and was always the first line to help the local population. So what type of help did you offer and do you continue to offer? First of all, we told our parishioners that the parish is open. Also, during war, we are celebrating the Mass. We are hosting people. We had 35 people hosted here in the church, and we live together. We prayed together. We held the Mass together. And this was a sort of parish communion. And then we were joined by refugees that were asking for food, for dresses, for drugs. Did you get help from Italy and the rest of Europe? Yes, from Italy and countries like Spain and Poland. Okay. We have many of the people that Don Pedro helped during this month, and in particular Bodgan family that we would like to invite here. So we introduce the family. Ania, mother of 5 children, one couldn't join. Camila is the eldest daughter, and then Ivanka, Misha, Solomnia, Bordon. So they decided to stay here, not to leave their country, and they are lucky because they have a cottage south of the capital, and this is where they find the shelter and were isolated. Yes, because when the war started, they run away from Kiev. They had a cottage in the countryside, and they spent all these months there. And they were lonely because they had no friends. They didn't have the parish with them, no sacraments, no Eucharist, no confession. And once I went to them to see them 60 kilometers south of Kiev, and we celebrated the Eucharist. I confessed them, and it was something important. Yes, because war means not only material destruction but also isolation. And I wanted to ask a question to Anya. Did this war somehow reinforce family unity?
Ми з чоловіком завжди були в єдності, тому що ходили в церкву, в некатехумінальну спільноту, і це підтримувало нас. Під час війни був страх, була паніка, але внутрішньо відчувалася підтримка один одного. Ми відкривали Слово Боже, ми молилися з дітьми лаудесами, і це нам дуже допомагало.
Very shortly, they felt how this loneliness, because they had no sacraments, they belonged to this parish, and they had to live far away from the parish. And they felt very lonely, but this made them pray more, spend more time together, pray with their children, and be in close contact with the Word of God. And I wanted to ask a question to the eldest daughter, Camilla. As eldest daughter, you somehow felt fear about it. Did you convey some courage? Did you encourage your siblings?
Як ти могла знайти сили, щоб підтримати твоїх братів, сестер?
Ну, коли почалась війна, я дуже багато плакала і, був страх, звичайно. Але я розуміла, що як старша донька, я маю дуже багато допомагати батькам. І я знаходила сили через Бога, через молитви, щоб заспокоювати дітей, розповідала їм казки, гралася з ними, відволікала їх, щоб вони не думали про війну.
She says that at the beginning she really feared a lot. She feared war. She didn't know whether they were going to survive or not. But she prayed. Thanks to prayer, she could help her siblings, play with them, help her parents as eldest daughter. Thank you very much for all the feelings that you spoke about in this complicated moment from Ukraine, from the parish of the Assumption in Kiev. I would like to give the line back to you. Thank you to the families, thank you to the priest, and thank you to the colleague. The Holy Father is going to join us, but I want to speak about a couple, the Islamic Quattrocchi, the first couple that was beatified by John Paul II in 2001, and they had 4 children, Don Tarcisio, Father Tarcisio, and Sister Cecilia, while the smaller child, Enriqueta, was declared venerable by Pope Francis. So the whole family is holy. And the grandchild is here with us, Francesco Beltrame Quattrocchi. Welcome. Good evening, Francesco. Welcome. Come and join us on the stage. Before welcoming the Holy Father, we wanted to ask you something, Francesco. You are a university teacher. You teach bioengineering in Genoa, and you are the grandchild of Luigi and Maria Beltrame. I knew Maria as a child, and I agree that she was really holy. They were able to be astonished by the beauty of the world, and beauty unites us. I really received a lot of gifts during my life, and I didn't perceive it when they were blessed by St. Paul in the Vatican. Now I understand what the children felt, or what they did can be passed on to all young people. They must be astonished by the beauty of the world and perceive it, and in their religion, in their creed, in their lifestyle, at any latitude, they have to pray for this with their faith. And here we have some objects that belong to the Beltrame couple. We have a Bible. Can you tell about it? Yes, a Bible given by Luigi to my father, and here's the ring of Maria, and this is the engagement ring of Luigi. I have his engagement ring. Enriqueta gave it to me when she adopted me. Then there is an icon of the Maria of Pompeii, and this is something I saw the first time in Naples when they were declared venerable. I have another question, very last question, because the Holy Father, your adoptive mother, Enriqueta, what do you remember? Well, I remember her ability, as well as all the other brother and sister, to renew by changing. The family understood that things change and renewed. When you renew, you maintain the title, that is to say, the stupor about the beauty of the world. You need to be amazed.
Dopo aver sentito queste parole, queste
Into the testimonies, we get ready to welcome the Holy Father on the notes of Alleluia, sung by Il Volo, always accompanied by conductor Piero Grani and the Marche Orchestra.
I heard the was a secret chord that David played and it pleased the Lord, but you don't really care for music, do you? It goes like this: the fourth, the fifth, the minor fall, and the major lift. The baffled king composed hallelujah, hallelujah,
And we now welcome Pope Francis to the Paul VI Hall.
Applause, please.
The Holy Father wheeled into the Paul VI Hall. As most people are aware, the Holy Father has for the past few weeks been moving about in a wheelchair on account of some health issues with his knee. And he is now here to take part in the ceremony this evening, the Festival of Families, to open the 10th World Meeting of Families. Reminder too to those watching us on television, our broadcast this evening is also being sent out via radio, so we will offer a few descriptions for those who cannot watch visually what's happening here in the auditorium.
Santo Padre, è con profonda gratitudine che mi rivolgo a lei innanzi a questa gioiosa platea di famiglie che vengono non solo dalla città di Roma, ma da tutto il mondo. La ringrazio anche
I would like to thank you also on behalf of the Diocese of Rome that with the Dicastery for Laity, Family and Life organized this meeting. And on behalf of all families present today, especially those who came to represent other countries here in Rome. After more than 2 years of pandemic and so many organizational uncertainties, we finally organized and came to this meeting. Spouses, families, religious, pastoral workers, after 4 years from the World Meeting in Dublin, wanted to meet you again, to live in communion with you, Holy Father, the joy, the beauty, and the difficulty of being a family. Today we have here with us on this stage 5 families that welcome the invitation to give the world the testimony of their human journey, their spiritual journey. Some families from Rome, one from Ukraine, and one from Congo. These are not perfect families, those families that we present to you. But as you always say, Holy Father, perfect families do not exist. These are normal families that, as many other people at any latitude in any country, go through suffering and difficulties, are typical of our time. The fear of getting married in a society that is discouraging them to commit forever. The fatigue of and difficulty of forgiving in a world that pushes to individualism and urges to think only about oneself, selfishness, sickness, that is sometimes really so tough, and you decide to give up your life to save the life of your child. Events that really don't make sense to the eyes of people, but that if lived through with faith can really open to the holiness of the family. Family today is a complex reality. Challenges, problems that have to be faced in every moment, in every day of engaged spouses, families, parents and children. Difficulty seems to be insurmountable, but it's in these difficulties that the Church wants to take care with misery, with mercy. And as you exhort us, the Church should be the house of tenderness. It's like a home where the Father is waiting with patience and with love, waiting for the children who are looking for Him with humbleness. And thank you, Holy Father, for being here today with us.
That was Cardinal Kevin Farrell, the prefect of the dicastery for Laity, Family and Life. We're hosting the World Meeting of
Your
Families.
Holiness, on behalf of all families present here today and those following
Amadeus
us
and
from
Giovanna
many
introducing
countries all
the
around
various
the world, we
families
thank you for
that
your
will be
welcome,
giving witness
because
of their
we
experiences
always
of family
immediately
life.
felt at home here. Welcome. We are grateful for your teaching and for evangelic testimony of your life. Thank you, because we find in you love and the care of a Father for all of us. Thank you.
And their words of welcome to the Holy
Your
Father.
Holiness, today we are here to listen to your words and to be helped along our journey of faith and encourage us, family, to keep going despite suffering and difficulties. And there are 5 families, 5 stories, 5 families that will open the heart to all of us and will tell us their life story. We introduce the first family. Ciao, Pope Francis, and greetings to all of you here. We are Matteo, Francesco, Riccardo, and Gabriele, and these are our parents, Father Luigi and Mommy Serena. In 2012, I was 24 when I met Serena at the gym when I worked. How can I describe the joy I felt when I met this woman? It was very difficult, but it's something real, tangible, that totally revolutionized my life and her life. And in this whirlwind of emotion, after a short time, we started living together. And with the birth of our first child in 2013, we became a family. 16 months after the birth of Matthew, we had Riccardo and then Gabriele. And everything took on a new meaning. Daily challenges were never missing. Because let's face it, choosing to embrace parenthood today is difficult, so difficult, though so beautiful. Bills have to be paid, professional life to be reconciled with family life, important people that left us too early. Well, in a short, all unforeseen events of life that reshuffle the hard-won balances. That is life. And when you have the chance to enjoy it with your children, who are the real added value in every daily gesture, because they force you to cherish the future, starting from what is there and not from what you wish was there, everything becomes a beautiful opportunity. Though we were brought up being Catholic families and had always envisioned our marriage, today we have not, unfortunately, got married, especially after accepting the gift of parenthood. And we didn't find the community that would support us with open arms for what we are. And this has distanced us from the Church. But even in our particular journey in the Church, we had an important goal: baptize our 3 children, because we had a faint certainty that despite the noble human efforts, we were not enough. We are not enough to ourselves. and that we are not made by ourselves. And this is something we reconfirmed before our community of friends, choosing to have our children receive this sacrament. And through this imperfect community of families, we encounter the true face of Christ, a good father who first of all welcomes and then educates, not only in words, but especially by giving an example. Of course, these last 2 years of pandemic really were testing us. They forced us to reorganize spaces in our homes and to do different tasks. Of course, working as we usually work, and we work in the healthcare field, and therefore we were rarely together at home to spend quality time with our children for several months. Physically, we were alone. Our souls were in pain, and in those moments when fatigue was endless and crushed any noble purpose of reaction to that stark reality, we had the grace of being supported by other families and by their sound and exemplary faith. And this allowed us not to be overwhelmed by events and not to give up. I remember some direct social media in which a very dear couple of friends, parents of 5 children, told about their daily life and all the difficulties they had during the first lockdown, the fatigue, the mistakes, the small joys. And we recognized ourselves in that story. We understood that our difficulty was shared, and it should not, however, crush us, but rather call us back to the desire to trust in the one who can everything, exactly as testified to us with their Christian faith. And this was essential, exactly like a catechesis, I would say therapeutic. We are not an example, we represent a reality that is perhaps quite numerous of cohabitating families. We are simple parents who have founded everything on human principles: love, obedience, respect, responsibility, sacrifice, solidarity, forgiveness, and resilience. We face and embrace everyday life together with our children, who have made everything more beautiful, because they give us the strength to go beyond, and they urge us to make that small gesture that can guarantee them a better future. In this journey of about 10 years, we had the grace of being supported by other families that Providence has placed mysteriously along our path, and to whom we are grateful for teaming up with us. They saved us and allowed us to reconnect with the Church and rekindle our dormant faith. Holy Father, this is our tortuous path so far. We hope and trust that everything will lead us to crown our desire for a marriage, which is not a point of arrival, but a further point of re-beginning, achieved after a premarital journey that starts from what is there, that opens our hearts even more to the acceptance of Christ, and that gives us the strength to continue to meet the challenges of life with all our, albeit meager, human capacities, and rediscover Christian faith that leads us to put Christ and not ourselves and our strength at the centers of our lives.
That was the first family that bears witness this evening. They're now going to greet our Holy Father and shake the hands of Pope Francis, who offers them a little rosary. Serena and Luigi with their children, Matteo, Francesco, Riccardo, and Gabriele are the first of 5 families that will be bearing witness about different aspects and different experiences of their own family life.
Good evening, Holy Father. Our family is greatest joy and greatest gift that the Lord gave us. There have been good times and less good times, grace, darkness.
This is Roberto and Maria Anselma Corbella,
That
parents
help
of
us to go
Chiara.
through even difficult times. The Lord committed first on the day when we say yes to each other. From that yes, many others have followed. He called us to take on the task of parents of two beautiful daughters, Elisa and Chiara. Our life has passed in peace of mind, serenity, and daily commitment, facing the challenges of each day, trying to pass on to our daughters our faith, our values, as every good family tries to do. Day after day, day in, day out, with God's help and everyone's commitment, we have built this fortress. Because a family is a fortress if love is at the center. Elisa is married and mother of 3 lovely and lively children. She lives with a family in northern Italy where she works. And she explained when I complain about distance that Lord called her to work there. Chiara has already won her battle, and on June 13, 2012, she returned to the Father's house after a series of hard trials. Married to Enrico in 2008, Chiara faces 2 pregnancies, both with the poor diagnosis of severe malformation incompatible with life. Enrico and Chiara choose to welcome Maria Grazia Letizia and Davide Giovanni with love, and at their birth, after baptizing them, return them to the Father. There is no link between the first and the second malformation, say the doctors, and no genetic problem either. Trusting and confiding in God, they open themselves to life again, and this time is a healthy son, Francesco, a true gift from God, who is now 11 years old. Chiara, however, after 4 months of pregnancy, discovers she has a tongue problem that will turn out to be a very aggressive cancer. She begins a whole medical journey in which, wanting to preserve Francis' life, she tries to negotiate with doctors, treatments and operations. She undergoes an initial surgery, and during pregnancy, she postpones all what could compromise Francesco's life after his birth. The dragon, as she calls it, doesn't stop. Francesco was only 1 year old when Chiara leaves us after showing us how, in every situation, one can expect the utmost happiness in this life with God as a guide. Chiara's strength was trusting and abandoning in God, who is a good Father, and everything contributes to the good of those who love God. She made choices with joy and conviction, because, as she states during one of her testimonies, God puts the truth in each of us, and it's not possible to misunderstand it. Chiara was a very concrete person. She did not run away in the face of life's trial. She faced them with her gaze heavenward. From the time when she was a child, she always had a goal in her mind. Every step she made was directed towards a goal. With God's help and with Mary's guidance, she committed to reach it. With personal prayer that kept her in relationship with Lord, from whom she received the grace that nourished her faith. Chiara was open-minded. She respected others, but this didn't weaken her faith, because she was always consistent. She was never arrogant, never imposing her ideas. She didn't impose them on others, but she promoted her ideas, especially by example. And she was always humbly ready to acknowledge her mistakes. We found ourselves like Mary at the foot of the cross. We accepted without understanding. But Chiara's serenity of mind opened for us a window to eternity and continues to shed light on this. Still today, it was difficult for us to accompany her to the threshold of heaven and to let her go. But from that moment, such a grace flowed that gave us a glimpse of God's plan and kept us from falling into despair. Her suffering bore many fruits and give us the knowledge that we cannot follow Christ without embracing the cross. With great joy, in 2018, we witnessed the opening of the diocesan phase of the beatification process. And when God opens a door, no one closes it. And when God closes it, no one opens it. As family, we have seen the importance of educating our children, remembering that they are not ours and it's not a right to have children. They are first of all a gift, and those who receive it must be aware that their duty is to accompany them till we can. Because as St. Francis said, and as Chiara wrote to her son, the contrary of life is possession.
That was Roberto and Maria Anselma Corbella, the parents of the servant of God, Chiara Corbella Petrillo, who died of cancer after giving birth to her third child. She died in 2012, just aged 28. And Blessed Chiara had lost 2 children early in her marriage.
Before continuing with the story of the other
and
three
later
families,
continued dangerous pregnancy while she had cancer in order to bring her third child to birth. She was declared a servant of God in 2018. Once again, we hear from Il Volo with the Philharmonic Orchestra of Marchigiana singing Ave Maria Misericordiae.
La luce dell'est brilla in te, nel tuo sguardo senza età. La dolcezza è verità, armonia profonda. C'è un mistero dentro te, che è più grande di ogni idea, e va oltre la realtà, come un'onda di marea, da cui nasce il canto. Ave Maria, canta l'anima mia, come un aquilone al vento, si affida e fa Tu sei la voce che io sento nel deserto intorno a me. sei l'antidoto all'assenzio dei miei giorni fragili, e per questo adesso io canto. Ave Maria, canta l'anima mia, come il fiume viene al mare, l'orizzonte che non ha. Mater misericordiae, per chi chiede quell'amore che è il senso della
Once again, that was Il Volo with the Marchigiana Philharmonic Orchestra. They're performing Ave Maria Misericordiae. A third couple now will bear testimony. This is Paul and Germaine Balenza.
Repubblica Democratica del Congo.
We're speaking in French. They're from the Congo, with an Italian translation that will be provided for you in English translation.
Nel 1995.
We have been married
Siamo
for
quindi sposati da
27 years,
27 anni
and our life as a couple
e la
has
nostra
had
vita
its ups
matrimoniale ha
and
avuto alti e
downs,
bassi,
like all
come tutte le
couples.
coppie.
L'année passée,
Last year, in our 26 years
Durante il
of
nostro
marriage,
26esimo anno di matrimonio
I experienced something
ho vissuto delle
unacceptable.
situazioni per me inammissibili,
Repeated
con
unfaithfulness
ripetute infedeltà da parte di mio marito,
from my husband, lack of sincerity in his life
con
with
una
me,
mancanza di sincerità nel suo rapporto con me,
mismanagement of
con
family
una cattiva
money
gestione del patrimonio
and
familiare,
assets, feeling that power had turned his
e
head
sentivo che il potere gli aveva dato alla testa,
and that he was no longer interested in
sentivo che
me.
non era più interessato a me.
Therefore, I decided to leave
Di conseguenza ho deciso di andarmene da casa.
and to leave my home and go and live
Ho
with my
deciso di andare a
sister.
vivere da mia sorella.
seul avec nos trois
Alone
garçons
with
qui
our
ont vécu
3
cette
older
situation.
boys,
Rimasto solo con i nostri 3 figli ormai grandi che avevano vissuto questa situazione,
Ma vie devenait
my life became
la mia vita
unbearable.
è diventata insopportabile.
pendant plus d'une année d'absence de mon
During
épouse
more than a
Germaine,
year of absence of
Durante il
my
periodo
wife,
di assenza di mia moglie Germaine, durato più di un anno,
j'ai
I
traversé
went
de
through
dures
a
épreuves,
lot of hardship
ho vissuto molte difficoltà,
car jamais dans ma
because I
vie
could
je ne
never
pouvais
in
penser
my life
divorcer.
think of getting
perché
divorced
mai
one
nella mia
day.
vita avrei potuto pensare di divorziare un giorno.
Moi qui suis
Me,
très
who
engagé
is
dans la
very
vie
involved in the
pastorale,
pastoral life
Proprio io che mi occupo molto di pastorale,
et
and
président
president
des
of the
députés
Catholic
catholiques de mon
deputies of my
proprio io che
country,
sono presidente dei deputati cattolici del mio paese,
j'étais
I was
complètement perdu
completely lost,
ero completamente smarrito,
sur tout que mon
especially
épouse a
since my
trouvé
wife
bon
found
d'exposer
it appropriate to
toutes mes
expose all my
supposées
supposed
erreurs dans les
mistakes
réseaux
on social
tanto più che
networks.
mia moglie aveva ritenuto opportuno rivelare tutti i miei presunti errori sui social network.
Je me suis senti
I felt
Mi sono
humiliated.
sentito davvero umiliato.
face à cette situation.
Given the situation,
Di fronte a questa situazione,
some people tried to bring me back
alcune persone hanno cercato di farmi
to
tornare in
reason,
me,
while others did everything they could to make it even worse.
mentre altre persone hanno fatto di tutto per aggravare la situazione della mia vita di coppia.
Our two families got together to reconcile
Le
us.
nostre due famiglie si sono riunite per farci riconciliare.
But my decision to divorce remained firm.
Ma la mia decisione di divorziare rimaneva ferma.
I broke off all contact with my husband
Ho interrotto in quel momento ogni contatto con mio marito
and decided to start a new life.
e ho deciso di iniziare una nuova vita.
All the negotiations by our sponsors, our friends, our families failed.
Tutti i tentativi di mediazione da parte dei nostri padrini, madrine, dei nostri amici comuni e delle nostre famiglie sono falliti.
But the Lord, present in our marriage, answered the deepest desire in my heart and saved our marriage.
Ma il Signore, presente nel nostro matrimonio, ha risposto al desiderio più profondo del mio cuore ed ha salvato il nostro matrimonio.
Thus, I became aware that our couple belonged to an association of lay Catholics called the Christian Family Community.
Ecco dunque che mi sono ricordato in quel momento che la nostra coppia apparteneva ad un'associazione di laici cattolici chiamata Comunità Famiglia Cristiana.
Whose mission is the sanctification of couples and families.
E la missione di questa comunità è proprio la santificazione delle coppie e delle famiglie.
J'ai sollicité l'accompagnement du couple senior de cette communauté.
Ho quindi chiesto ad una coppia senior di questa comunità di accompagnarci.
The Lord has touched Germaine's heart and she accepted the help of the
Il
community.
Signore ha toccato anche il cuore di Germaine perché ha accettato l'aiuto della comunità.
We had very regular meetings, first separately and then together for 5 long months.
Abbiamo quindi avuto degli incontri molto assidui, prima separatamente, poi insieme per 5 lunghi mesi.
These meetings allowed us to tell each other hard truth.
Questi incontri ci hanno consentito di dirci in faccia le verità più crude.
To empty our hearts of hatred,
Abbiamo potuto svuotare i nostri cuori dall'odio,
anger,
dalla rabbia,
malice and other negative
dalla
feelings.
cattiveria e da altri sentimenti negativi.
We were subject to spiritual exercises under the guidance of the senior couple.
Abbiamo compiuto degli esercizi spirituali guidati dalla coppia senior della comunità.
We even went on a 3-day retreat away from the capital with our supervisors.
E con i nostri leader abbiamo anche partecipato ad un ritiro di 3 giorni lontani dalla capitale.
At the end of this retreat, we sincerely forgave each other
Alla fine di questo ritiro ci siamo sinceramente perdonati
and decided to resume our life together.
e abbiamo deciso di riprendere la nostra vita insieme.
God was with us
Dio era con noi
and gave us the strength for this journey.
e Dio ci ha dato la forza di affrontare questo cammino.
En présence de
In
nos
the
deux
presence of
familles,
our
nous
two
avons demandé
families, we
pardon.
asked our children for
Davanti alle
forgiveness.
nostre 2 famiglie abbiamo chiesto perdono ai nostri figli.
Un prêtre
Priest came
accompagnateur est venu
to
bénir
bless
notre
our
nouvelle
new
maison.
home.
Un sacerdote che ci ha accompagnati in questo cammino è venuto a benedire la nostra nuova casa
Et
And
nous a
helped us to publicly renew our marriage vows during a Eucharistic
e questo
celebration.
sacerdote ci ha aiutati a rinnovare pubblicamente le nostre promesse matrimoniali durante una celebrazione eucaristica.
Since then, we have been living together with our 3
Da
children.
allora viviamo di nuovo insieme ai nostri 3 figli
Harmony and happiness have returned.
e sono tornate armonia e felicità in casa
Voilà
nostra.
This is how forgiveness combined with prayer has produced fruit in our lives.
Ecco dunque come il perdono unito alla preghiera ha prodotto frutti nella nostra vita.
Nous vous remercions.
We thank you.
That was Paul and Germaine Balenza from Congo speaking in French, bearing witness to their journey of forgiveness and reconciliation in their marriage, and sharing a few words now with Pope Francis. Our next couple is Pietro and Erica Kyriakou, who have 6 children, and are hosting Irina and her daughter Sofia, who have fled from the war in Ukraine. A brief musical interlude between the various families who are speaking here today.
Buonasera, Santo Padre.
Good evening, Holy Father. My name is Irina. Together with my daughter Sofia, we arrived from Ukraine. After 10 days from the beginning of the war, we left our city of Kiev. Unfortunately, it was no longer possible to stay in our country. We hoped that the conflict would not cause so much death and damage and would end soon. That is why we moved to the western part of Ukraine, which is safer. But after a few days, my husband called us and said that a bus would come by to take us to Italy. He insisted, saying that this was an opportunity and that we had to take advantage of this, because nowhere in our country would we really be safe if the war went on. The decision to leave was not easy. It caused me a lot of suffering. On the one hand, I wanted to be in a safe place with my daughter and to be able to sleep without fear and noise we heard because of the fighting and without sirens. On the other hand, we did not know what situation we'll find in Italy. I felt insecure, sad, full of doubts about leaving or not leaving part of my family in Ukraine, my husband, my elderly parents. We didn't know where we would go in Italy, how we would live, and how my daughter could continue her studies. We had no certainty. Today, I thank God because He sent so many good people on our path. So many good people helped us and showed a big heart by giving us great help and hope. Right now, we are hosted by the family of Pietro and Erica, who offered us a newly completed apartment in their house where they live. Although they have a very large family with 6 children, they welcomed us with love. We are very grateful for this welcome and hospitality, for the help of their friends, family and parish community. Although we are doing well, we miss our family and our country very much. We want to go back home, but we don't know when this will happen. But we do not lose hope. I have very serious health problems. In Ukraine, I had to undergo surgery, but everything stopped when the war began. And this worried me a lot. I was very sick, and I didn't know what to do. Pietro and Erica reassured me, said I had to have courage, that God would provide. I felt everything seemed impossible because of the high cost and the very long waiting times here in Italy. So I prayed, and with confidence I asked the Lord to help me. After a few days, Pietro told me that there would be a possibility to go to the Gemelli hospital for an examination completely free of charge. God listened to me. It was a medical visit given by Providence. The doctor, after some tests, told me that I had to undergo a very serious invasive surgery and then another expensive medical examination. I was worried, but the doctor was very helpful and with great generosity received me for free and arranged to operate me for free in a private clinic. This too was a concrete sign of God's providence and the love of neighbor. God helped me and listened.
Good evening, I'm Sofia. I'm 17 and I have been with my mom here in Rome for 2 months. I'm suffering a lot. I miss my life in Ukraine. I left all my friends and loved ones. I miss my grandparents. And I'm also worried about my study because this year I'm supposed to start university. I'm looking here for some opportunities for my future. Thanks to the people who help us, and I thank my mother who brought me away from the war. I have recently been taking an English course which I really like a lot. These are free classes for Ukrainian kids. I'm very happy to study together with the kids and experience some normality. I also started a karate class. It's my first experience in a combat sport. It's true that every chance is not easy and causes suffering. Every change is not easy and causes suffering, but I'm sure it makes us stronger. All this is possible thanks to God who is good and helps us, and also thanks to the generosity of all of you.
Irina and her daughter Sofia, who are refugees from the war in Ukraine. Now we hear from
Holy Father,
Pietro.
I'm Pietro. I'm 30.
Kyriako, the father
I've been
of
married
6
to
children.
Erika for 10 years. We have 6
his
children,
family is
Alessio
hosting
11.
Irina and Sofia. And a round of applause for their 6 children.
Alessio di 11 anni.
Alessio 11, Benedetto 8, Giuseppe 6, Emanuele 4, and Tommaso 2, and Teresa 1 year, and Sofia in heaven.
Noi non abbiamo accolto Irina.
We did not welcome Irina and Sofia because we are good. In fact, we are weak. And like everyone, we have difficulties in marriage. And also with our children. But faith in God inspired us to be open to welcome. We live a faith journey in our parish, a neo-catechumenal journey, the parish of San Francis in Acilia, southern outskirts of Rome. God has helped us so much in our story, in our life. We felt welcomed and loved in a difficult time in our lives when we learned we were expecting a child, and I was just 18. The Lord made himself known and entered into our sufferings, loving us without judging us. Also, the parish community, the parish welcomed us by helping and supporting us in our difficulties. We already expected a child. We were invited to live a Christian engagement before we got married in chastity. And we should not live together. It was a period of test. The Lord lightened our way. We got married, and faith helped us to welcome the children God gave us, to reconcile ourselves by asking for forgiveness, and to pass on the faith to our children. Why do I say this? I want to emphasize that hosting Irina and Sofia is just an act of gratitude to God, since we can only give for free that love that we freely receive from the Lord and from the Church. Without the help of faith, we would have not welcomed anyone. We felt that we could offer our availability without any pretension, because we are convinced that welcoming the other is welcoming Christ. Holy Father, America. For me, it was a surprise when we were called to give hospitality to Irina and Sofia. I didn't know how it would be, because hosting can be uncomfortable. Sometimes it is difficult. It is necessary to give up a little bit of one's habit.
Right from the beginning with Pietro, we wanted to offer our home and welcome, host these people. We felt it was an invitation that came from God to give a little bit of our comfort and welcome brothers and sisters in need. This would do good to our family. We felt very helped and supported by our parish, our family, our community. And we thought it was also an important sign for our children. During a family prayer time, we shared with the children the idea of welcoming a family fleeing war, explaining them that welcoming others is like welcoming Jesus. They were very happy, and they were looking forward to the arrival of this Ukrainian family. For our whole family, the arrival and presence of Irina and Sophia in our lives represent a great blessing from heaven.
That was Pietro and Erica Kyriakou and their family, along with their guests Irina and Sofia from Ukraine, who are refugees from the war. And their family. Having the opportunity to meet with Pope Francis. In fact, both their families having the opportunity to meet with Pope Francis, receive rosaries from him, and share a few words with our Holy Father. The final family that we'll hear from is Zofia Savicki, the widow of Italian Ambassador Luca Attanasio, with their children Sofia, Lila, and Miral, who will be speaking about being called to build fraternity in the world today. Luca Attanasio was an Italian
Buonasera.
Mi chiamo Zacchia.
I'm Zakia, and I'm the mother of three beautiful little girls, Sophia, 5, and twin girls, 4 years old, Lilia and Miral. My husband is no longer with us. Luca was the Italian ambassador to the Democratic Republic of Congo. And was killed on his way to visit a UN food project for children in February 2021. I don't like to talk about him in the past tense because I always feel Luca next to me, and I'm here to tell you about our family, built bricks by brick, together with him, love and loyalty. But I will tell you about my family today, wounded with Luca, who, however, although he's far away, makes us feel his presence every day. It is an honor for me to share and tell this great story of love in the presence of Pope Francis. Our three little girls, who didn't know the figure of the Pope, the first time they met him, seeing dressed in white, they thought he was a doctor. And they made a point, because the Pope is a doctor who cares for the souls of all Christians, always cares for those who need comfort. Thank you. I am Moroccan from Casablanca. I am of Muslim faith. Luca, on the other hand, Catholic, grew up in the province of Linguade with a great experience of oratory and meeting with the Taizé community
and the World Youth Day. The difference in religion in our family has never been an obstacle. On the contrary, we got married in 2015 in church in Limbiate according to the Pauline marriage rite. At the same time, we celebrated a Moroccan wedding in Casablanca. The diversity between our religions certainly made us richer. In fact, we base our family on genuine love, with respect, solidarity and dialogue between our cultures. Love was the key to overcoming all differences and difficulties. In fact, with my husband, we learnt the importance of communication and listening, especially in the most difficult moments when as a husband and wife we find ourselves sharing experiences in difficult lands, from Nigeria to Congo. We have learned step by step to live together without judging each other, because we always believed in the same God who asked us in two different holy books, the Bible and the Quran, to love our neighbor, to do good and never evil, to respect others. In our home, these two books have always been present. We have always read them to our little girls, and with Luca hand in hand, we have often prayed together in any place or part of the world. We pray together in church, we pray together in the mosque. That one God who loves us and saves us, we respect with each other. We celebrated Christmas together with joy, and also Ramadan, which brought us closer to the suffering of every child who lacks food and water every day. With my husband, we decided to build a family, despite the many cultural differences, because our love has always been strong and free. Every now and then, it is true, it was like being on a roller coaster, but our three little girls strengthened that bond of ours that made us overcome barriers without problems, criticism and suffering. I hope our family can be an example to those who need to believe in healthy and true love, to those who live in differences and difficulties, because we made it with a smile, holding hand by hand, praying and loving those who gave us life. Even today, although Luca is no longer among us, that love, precisely because it is healthy, sound and true, continues. It's a love that doesn't fade, that never dies. Some may be discouraged. There are many women like me left alone with children. Every now and then you hear about brave mums. I'm lucky. I have my mum courage, Malika, who helps me every day, who supports me, and then there is always Luca, who loved me and gave me the strength to bring up our children. We are always five of us. Even if he's far away, we feel him next to us. In our family, love can never be lacking, because it is with this feeling that it was created and strengthened. My task today is to keep going. I have the task of passing on to the little girls that love born with Luca. There may be moment of discouragement, especially evening, when silence falls, when I would need my husband beside me to make our little three princesses smile, to read them a fairy tale, to tell them about his thousands of adventure. But I'm sure that they still grow up strong, smiling and genuine, like their daddy. Life can be unfair, but we must not and cannot give in to discouragement. Conversely, we must give thanks for the gift of our family, which, despite being hurt, is moving forward thanks to special care, love, and the opportunity to give courage to those who suffer. Who knows how many families suffer more than ours? It comes to me to say, courage, you're not alone. And even if Luca is no longer with us, he remains as a light for Sofia, Lilia and Miral, a beacon that can help us spread the values of peace, love and justice as citizens of the world. In this regard, as a husband and as ambassador, Luca was the first supporter of the NGO I founded under the name Mama Sofia, to help in Africa street women, children,
precisely in order to pass on his legacy of values and spiritual legacy on the first anniversary of his death, to turn that day of death into a day of rebirth, Mama Sofia was reborn as a foundation that today promotes peace, justice, and solidarity among peoples through cultural activities of social interest, and whose goal is to help especially young people and children in underdeveloped or developing countries. What happened to Luca in Congo gives us more strength to help the weak, especially in that land. They are not to be blamed, but they need love and help. In conclusion, I wish everyone that your family can be, albeit in difference of culture and suffering, a place where we can always find light and the certainty that God will never leave us alone. Thank you.
That was Zakia Siddiqui, the widow of Ambassador Luca Attanasio, that is the Italian ambassador to the Democratic Republic of Congo, who was killed in his humanitarian work in the DRC. Two other people were killed in the attack that left her husband dead, and she spoke on the importance of fraternity. We'll now hear a discourse from our Holy Father responding to the testimonies that he has heard, and we await the words of Pope Francis.
Dear families, it is for me a great joy to be here today with you after these upheavals, the pandemic and now the war in Europe that adds up to many wars that are afflicting us. I would like to thank Cardinal Martis and all the collaborators of the Dicastery of Laity, Priest and Life that with their dedication made this event possible. I would like to thank the families coming from so many countries around the world, and I would like to thank those who gave their testimony. Thank you from the deep of my heart. It's not easy to speak about their lives in front of such a big audience, to speak about the receipt from God. Your testimony were in echo. You gave voice, you voiced the experience of so many families in the world that live the same joy, the same suffering and hope. And that is why I would like now to speak to you and to the spouses and families all around the world. I would like to feel how close I am to you, where you are in your life, in your where you live. And my encouragement is that you have to start from your real condition, from your real life, and start to walk together. This journey together as spouses, together as family, with other families, with the church. I'm thinking of the parable of the Good Samaritan who meets a wounded man in the street and get close to him, takes care of him and helps him to start his journey again. And this should be the church for you, a good Samaritan that comes close to you and helps you to continue your journey and to make a step forward, perhaps a small step.
And don't forget that proximity is alive, a style of God. Proximity, closeness, mercy. I try to explain these steps to make together, going back to the testimonies we listened to. A step forward to marriage. I thank you, Luigi and Serena, for having told very honestly about your experience despite all the difficulties. I think that it is very painful for all of us what you said. You didn't find a community supporting you for what you are. It's harsh. It's really harsh. And we are called upon reflecting. We have to be a welcoming church because our dioceses, our parishes become a community supporting, welcoming everyone with open arms. This is much needed. We need to fight against the culture of indifference. And you find the support in other families that are small churches. And when you explain the reason why you baptize your children, you said something very beautiful. Despite the human efforts, noble human efforts, we are not enough to ourselves. It's true, we can have the most beautiful ideal and dreams, but at the end we discover our limitations. And this is very wise when we speak of limitation. So we cannot do it alone. We cannot make it. We have to pray to God for His grace. This is the help that God gives us, not to leave us alone, because we are not enough to ourselves. We do not suffice. This is a sentence that I really appreciated. We do not suffice to ourselves. We are not enough. When a woman and a man fall in love, God offers them a gift, marriage, which is a wonderful gift that has the power of the love of God, long-lasting, faithful, capable to recover from unfaithfulness or challenges. Marriage is not something formal, a formality to go through. You don't get married to be labeled as a Christian, to obey rules or to organize a party or celebrate. You get married because you want to create a family on the rock that is God. In your marriage, God gives Himself to you so that you can mutually support each other. So courage. Married life is not an impossible mission. With the sacrament, God makes it a wonderful journey that you make with God, never alone. Family is not a beautiful idea that is impossible to reach. God guarantees His presence in marriage, in family, not only in the big day, but all through your life, and He's there to support you all during all your journey, day out. A step forward to
Continuing with the translation of the Pope's remarks, a step forward to embrace the cross. I thank you, Roberto and Maria Anselmo, because you told us the moving story of your own family, and in particular about Chiara. You spoke to us of the cross, which is part of the life of every individual and of every family.
Non ha distrutto la famiglia e non ha eliminato la serenità e la pace dai vostri cuori.
You testified that the heavy cross of Chiara's sickness and death did not destroy your family or eliminate the serenity and peace of your hearts. We can see this in your faces. You are not downcast, desperate, or angry with life. Quite the opposite. What we see in you is great serenity and great faith. You told us how Chiara's serenity opened for us a window into eternity. To see how she experienced the trial of her illness helped you to lift up your gaze, not to remain imprisoned in grief, but to be open to something greater, the mysterious plans of God, to eternity, to heaven.
I
thank you for this witness of faith. You also quoted something that Chiara had said. God puts a truth in each of us, and it is not possible to misunderstand it. God put into Chiara's heart the truth of a holy life, and so she wished to preserve the life of her child at the cost of her own life. As a wife, alongside her husband, she followed the way of the gospel of the family, simply and spontaneously. Chiara's heart also welcomed the truth of the cross as gift of self. Hers was a life given to her family, to the church, and to the whole world. We always need great examples to look at. May Chiara be an inspiration on our own journey of holiness, and may the Lord support and make fruitful every cross that families have to bear. A step forwards towards forgiveness. Paul and Germaine, you found the courage to tell us about the crisis that you went through in your marriage. We thank you for this.
Dobbiamo svelarcela e andare nella strada di risolverla. Non avete voluto addolcire la realtà con un poco di zucchero, no.
You didn't try to sweeten it with a bit of sugar, no. You called every cause of the crisis by its name: insincerity, infidelity, the misuse of money, the idols of power and career, growing resentment and hardness of heart. As you were speaking, I believe that all of us relived our own experiences of pain before similar situations of broken families. To see a family break up is a tragedy that cannot leave us indifferent. The laughter of married couples disappears, children are troubled, serenity is lost. And most of the time, nobody knows exactly what to do. That is why your story transmits hope. Paul said that at the bleakest moment of the crisis, the Lord answered his heart's deepest desire and saved his marriage. That's precisely what happens. Deep within the heart of each person is the desire for love not to end, for the story of love experienced together not to be cut short, for the fruits of love not to be dispersed. Everyone has this desire. No one wants a love that is short-term or is marked with an expiration date. So we suffer greatly whenever failings, negligence, and human sins make a shipwreck of marriage. But even amid the tempest, God sees what is in our hearts. By His providence, you met a group of lay people specifically committed to assisting families. That was the start of a journey of rapprochement and healing in your relationship. You began to talk to one another, to be open and sincere with each other, to acknowledge your faults, to pray together with other couples. And all those things brought you to reconciliation and forgiveness. Forgiveness, brothers and sisters. Forgiveness heals every wound. It is a gift welling out from the grace that Christ showers on couples and whole families whenever we allow Him to act, whenever we turn to Him. It was wonderful that you celebrated your own feast of forgiveness with your children and renewed your marriage promises at the celebration of Mass. It made me think of the feast that in Jesus' parable the father organized for his prodigal son, only this time the ones who went astray were the parents, not the child. The prodigal parents, we could say. Yet this too is wonderful and can be a great witness for children. Young people, as they emerge from infancy, begin to realize that their parents are not superheroes. They're not all powerful, much less perfect. In you, your children saw something much more important. They saw the humility to request forgiveness and the God-given strength to pick yourselves up after the fall. This is something that children really need, for they too will make mistakes in life and realize that they too are not perfect. But they will also remember that the Lord raises us up, that all of us are forgiven sinners, that we have to beg forgiveness from others, but also to be able to forgive ourselves. The lessons that they learned from you will remain in their hearts forever. And also with us, we would do well to listen. Thank you for this witness of forgiveness. Thank you so much.
Un passo in più verso l'accoglienza.
A further step forward towards welcome. Thank you, Irina and Sofia, for your witness. You gave a voice to all those persons whose lives have been devastated by the war in Ukraine. In you we see the faces and the stories of so many men and women forced to leave their homeland. We thank you, for you have not lost your trust in providence, and you have seen how God is at work in your lives, not least through the flesh and blood people he led you to encounter, host families, the doctors who helped you, and other kind-hearted women and men. The war brought you face to face with cynicism and human brutality. Yet you also encountered people of great humanity, people at their worst and people at their best. At their worst, the best and the worst of men. It is important for all of us not to keep dwelling on the worst, but to maximize the best, the great goodness of which every man and woman is capable. And from there to start over again. I thank you too, Pietro and Erica, for telling your own story, and for the generosity with which you welcomed Irina and Sofia into your already large family. You shared with us that you did so out of gratitude to God and with the spirit of faith as a call from the Lord. Eric told us that welcoming them was a blessing from heaven. Indeed, welcoming is a genuine charism of families, and especially of large families. We may think that in a large home, it is harder to welcome other people. But this isn't the case, for families with numerous children are trained to make room for others. They always have room to make space for others. In the end, this is what family is all about. And the family we welcome, it is to be welcomed. Husbands and wives are the first to welcome and accept one another, as they said they would do on the day of their marriage. I take you. Later, as they bring a child into the world, they welcome that new life. Whereas in cold and anonymous situations, the weak are often rejected. In families, on the other hand, it is natural to welcome them, to accept a child with a disability, an elderly person in need of care, a family member in difficulty who has no one else. This gives hope. Families are places of welcome. And woe if they were to disappear. Woe. Society would become cold and unbearable without welcoming families. They are the warmth of society, generous families. Look, this is a smile as a child runs across the stage in front of him. And a further step forward towards fraternity. I thank you, Zakia, for having shared your story with us. It is amazing and consoling to see what you and Luca built together remains alive. Your story was born and built on the sharing of very high ideals that you described when you said, "We based our family on authentic love, with respect, solidarity, and dialogue between our cultures." Nothing of that was lost, not even after the tragedy of Luca's death. Not only do the example and the spiritual legacy of Luca continue to live on and speak to the consciences of many people, but also the organization that Zacchia founded, in some ways, carries on his mission. Indeed, we can say that Luca's diplomatic mission has now become a mission of peace on the part of your entire family. In your story, we see clearly what is human and what is religious can become intertwined and bring forth precious fruit. In Zacchia and Luca, we find the beauty of human love, passion for life, altruism, and fidelity to one's own beliefs and religious tradition as a source of inspiration and interior strength. Your family expresses the ideal of fraternity. In addition to being a husband and wife, you lived as brother and sister in your humanity.
Anche questa è una scuola che si impara in famiglia, vivendo assieme a chi è diverso da me. In famiglia si impara a essere
living in the family together with others different from ourselves. We learn to be brothers and sisters. We learn to overcome divisions, prejudices, and narrow-mindedness, and to build together something great, something beautiful, on the basis of what we have in common. Lived examples of fraternity, like that of Luca and Zacchia, give us hope. They help us to look with greater confidence at our world, so turned by division and hostility. Thank you for this example of fraternity.
Senza menzionare tua mamma. Tua mamma che è qui.
And we can't remember Luke without remembering your mother who's helped you in this journey.
Ringrazio lei. Ringrazio lei di essere venuta con te oggi. Grazie. Cari amici,
dear friends, each of your families has a mission to carry out in our world, a testimony to give. We, the baptized, are especially called to be a message that the Holy Spirit takes from the riches of Jesus Christ and gives to his people. For this reason, I'd like you to ask yourselves this question. What is the word that the Lord wants to speak through our life to all those whom we meet? What step forward is he asking of our family today? Stop and listen. Let yourselves be changed by him, so that you too can change the world and make it home for all those who need to be welcomed and respected, for all those who need to encounter Christ and to know that they are loved. We need to live with our eyes raised to heaven. As Blessed Maria and Luigi Beltrami Cotrocchi used to say to their children, confronting the efforts and joys of life, always looking from the roof upwards. I thank you for being here. I thank you for the efforts you make in raising your families, and I ask you, all forward with courage and joy, and please don't forget to pray for me. Thank you. The words of our Holy Father. Receiving a standing ovation from the delegates gathered here in the Paul VI Hall at the Vatican. We'll now have the blessing of the Holy Father.
Dio creatore e salvatore che ha voluto la famiglia fondata sul patto nuziale e fonda l'abbondanza delle sue benedizioni. Cristo Signore che ha condiviso le gioie e le fatiche della famiglia umana, rallegri come a Cana la vita evangelica delle vostre comunità familiari.
Amen.
Lo Spirito Santo, vincolo di unità che ha fatto dei due una carne sola, renda feconda l'unione coniugale perché porti frutto copiosi di vita eterna.
Amen.
E la benedizione di Dio Onnipotente, Padre, Figlio e Spirito Santo, discenda su voi e rimanga sempre. Amen.
The Holy Father offering his apostolic blessing to those present. And our hosts thank the Holy Father for his words and his encouragement. And now, once again, we leave you with the choir, now of the Diocese of Rome, directed by Monsignor Frasino, again with the accompaniment of the Philharmonic Orchestra of Marchigiana, performing the hymn of the 10th World Meeting of Families. We believe in love. And as we listen to the final hymn, the hymn of the World Meeting of Families, I would like to thank you all once again for joining us this evening. Thanks to our partner stations, including Catholic TV, Catholic Faith Network, EWTN TV, at Marchand TV, and Luminous Radio, as well as all of the broadcasters relaying our words and images around the world. Thanks, to our producers and technicians here in studio, without whom these broadcasts would simply not be possible. Thanks especially to our technicians, as always. And thanks to all of you for joining us this evening for full coverage of today's events and all the events taking place in Rome for the World Meeting of Families. Along with other Vatican and world news, we invite you to visit the Vatican News web portal, www.vaticannews.va, as well as our Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube accounts. My name is Christopher Wells.
We are watching what is the Festival of Families taking place in Paul VI Hall. I'm Catherine Hadro, bringing you EWTN's continuous coverage of the 10th World Meeting of Families, and I'm joined by Dr. Matthew Bunson, Executive Editor and Washington, D.C. Bureau Chief of EWTN News, and Father Thomas Petrie, President of the Dominican House of Studies. Festival of Families just concluded, thus beginning the start of the 10th World Meeting of Families. Just to give a quick overview of what we just saw, and we'll delve into that, we just heard from Pope Francis himself give a beautiful and powerful talk on the importance of families. We heard musical performances from the pop opera group Il Voglio. Very powerfully, we heard from 5 families share their spiritual journeys. And there were also families from Kiev, Ukraine. So Matthew, we just heard Pope Francis. What stood out to you?
There are a couple things. The first and most obvious is we have to look at this festival sort of in its totality, where we had the testimonies, and Father, I'm looking forward to some of your assessments of the messy situations, the difficult and tragic situations that many families finds themselves in.
Yes.
Then Pope Francis took those testimonies and gave them a kind of theological and spiritual context. And so this presentation tonight, this reflection by Pope Francis, tries to pull those together. But at the end, what I always come back to is something that Pope Francis has talked about really from the start of his pontificate, of the church as a field hospital, a place where the wounded, the broken are welcome and given healing.
And he seemed to reiterate his desire to be close to us all and close to the families. He really is expressing his desire to be a shepherd to his flock.
Well, we've already used that word. It is sometimes not necessarily welcomed in some corners, accompaniment, because so much hinges on how you interpret that word. But Pope Francis tonight is giving us one of the keys for his vision of accompaniment, and that is being with these couples in these terrible times and helping them to move through those into real moments of holiness and healing.
Yes. Father, what stood out to you?
Well, I think Matthew's right. The accompaniment, but accompaniment through the grace of Jesus Christ. It was really prominent in the Holy Father's talk this evening. I think of that first couple, or Zorena's, what is her name? Zorena
Zangla and Luigi Franco.
Yeah, Zorena Zalna, when she mentioned using the need for baptism of their children and how the Pope highlighted when she said that the noblest human efforts, they realized as parents, that the noblest human efforts would not be enough, that parents need the help of God's grace. And the Pope went back to that and said, yes, that's exactly what the sacrament of marriage and the sacrament of baptism are. It means that God does not leave us alone. He doesn't leave us alone to live our life on our own efforts.
And it's important for us all, we're all in families, to recognize our weaknesses and our limitations and our need for the sacraments.
Well, that's right. And this, throughout these testimonies, some of these were difficult to listen to. As Pope Francis himself noted, we had testimonies of infidelity by Paul and Germaine Balenza from the Congo. We had this searing testimony of Pietro and Erica Kiriakou about what their guests from Ukraine, Irina and Sofia, have lived through. And then, of course, the remarkable and poignant testimony relating to the young girl, Claire Corbella.
Yes.
You know, Paul and Germaine Balenza, infidelity in marriage, I mean, for them to get up in front of a few thousand people and to speak so bluntly, the Pope noted how they didn't sugarcoat this reality. I certainly back in the States, and I suspect anywhere in the world, infidelity is often considered the most unforgivable sin against a marriage. And most couples do not come back from that. But here's a couple that did, and I think most priests usually know one or two couples that do come back from that. And it as the Pope said, it rips the family apart. It rips the family apart. But see, the hope in God's grace, and he called this couple witnesses of hope, right? The hope of God's grace is that God can, in fact, put pieces back together again. And he did for this couple. And now they have a more powerful love and connection than even before. It's a strange way where sin abounds, grace abounds all the more.
And look how God is using this couple.
Yes.
And that takes courage, that takes vulnerability to open up and share the darkest, hardest times of your family life. But look how now here they are at the World Meeting of Families, invited by the Vatican. One line that really stood out to me that Pope Francis said to follow up on that, Father, is forgiveness heals every wound.
Yeah.
And it's this reminder that it's necessary in every family.
Well, and he quotes himself in some of this with Gaudete Exultate and other things, but he also says, in marriage, Christ gives himself to you so that you have the strength to give yourselves to each other. Earlier, we were talking about that commitment, that giving of yourself to your spouse.
It's an important aspect. Of course, that's what marriage is. And because of our fallen humanity, because of our fallen nature, our emotions are often fickle. This is why, earlier, Catherine, you mentioned how love is a choice.
Right.
And so often I get nervous when especially I talk to young people and they haven't yet come to the maturity to know that love isn't always a feeling. Sometimes love requires you to be committed even when the other person isn't giving you any especially good reasons at the moment.
Exactly, and on that same thought, Pope Francis also mentioned there's always a time when children realize their parents are not superheroes.
Yeah, I'm sure that's a difficult moment for the parents.
Right.
And for the children.
Yes.
Yeah. To realize that your parents aren't perfect.
Yeah.
Because those are the moments, too, where in culture today, I would argue children are very vulnerable. And for children who have grown up in homes in very challenging domestic situations within the family, those moments, too, can really leave children vulnerable to the influences of the modern world.
Yes.
Can we talk about that line that Pope Francis quoted from Chiara Corbella?
Please.
You know, this line where I guess she used to say, God has put the truth into us, and we cannot misunderstand it. That is a biblical principle. That's St. Paul to the Romans. That is the fact that there is a natural law in us. There's an impetus in all of us to outward towards the other. That's a reference also to the new law of the gospel, the Holy Spirit working in us. And it is true. We cannot misunderstand it. You know, earlier today we were talking about vocations and discerning vocations. I mean, vocation is not a riddle. You know, God is not hiding your vocation from you. It's not a riddle that you have to solve. It's not complex geometry or trigonometry. Your vocation is where your heart gravitates towards. It's where your heart is moving towards. And if it's a religious vocation, sometimes people want to deny that, or they don't think that they're unusual, but they are, and they are denying it. But so often, and most naturally, it's your heart is in fact gravitating towards marriage, towards a spouse.
But there is the key of discernment.
There is a key of discernment, but the discernment is often maybe who I'm being called to marry to, or which religious order.
Right.
But the basic vocation is not a riddle.
And I love that quote that you brought up from Servant of God, Chiara Corbella Petrillo. And I just want to share some more background about her for our viewers, because I know a lot of young people who have a devotion to her. Here's this young woman, I believe she was born in 1984, died in 2012. She got married, conceived a baby very quickly. The baby died within 30 minutes of being born. Got pregnant again. That baby died within 30 minutes of being born. She got pregnant a third time and then was diagnosed with cancer and died shortly after. Here is this modern woman. She's almost this modern Saint Gianna, if you will. And her parents were here sharing her hardships and her witness. That was powerful.
Her testimony, and Father, you quoted her, but she's this role model for young people for commitment, but also understanding the importance of parenthood, of what it means to be a mother.
Yes, absolutely.
I wonder what it's like. You know, so we also saw the grandson of the Katrokis. I often wonder what it's like for these people to be living and to know that their mother, you know, his grandparents are in fact on the road to canonization. I have to think about that with Carlos Acutis, you know, blessed Carlos.
Right.
You know, his younger siblings were in the pew of his beatification ceremony. I once visited Fatima, and the niece of Francesco and Jacinta still lives and runs a gift shop right there. And to have like a canonized saint in your family,
in your home,
yes, it's got to be remarkable.
Who was your parent?
Who was your parent?
Or grandparent?
Yes.
Like with Blessed Carl of Austria.
Yeah,
he had descendants who were at his beatification.
It's got to be quite amazing.
And not that the saints were all perfect, too. There's a messiness to every life, including the saints.
Absolutely, but that's one of the points I think that Pope Francis is making, but that's also one of the true points about sanctity. No saint is sinless. I think Augustine said it so well that every sinner has a future and every saint has a past.
Wow. Yeah.
And it is that willingness to confront our own failings, but then to recognize that we are called to that holiness, but then to realize that that is something that we also have to build within our own families. And as a parent, as a child of a family, we have that obligation to help everyone in this communion of persons to strive for holiness and to reach heaven.
That reminds me of something that Pope Francis said. Each of your families has a mission to fulfill in the world. He's going to put everyone out here on a mission. I want to start wrapping up our coverage here with this question. What did we see in here tonight that will preview for us what these next few days are going to look like?
Well, I think first, in this testimony, we're going to be hearing similarly searing, vivid, even dark testimony, and how these couples, how these families made their way in this journey from the darkness into healing, from the darkness into Christ. I think that's something that we can really look forward to over the next few days. And it may be tough going in some of these presentations, but I think it's worthwhile.
I think it's going to be absolutely amazing because it's in those kinds of stories of people's hardship and their sins and still finding the light of Jesus Christ and the transformation that grace brings. I think it's going to be wonderful.
Love and joy in the midst of all of that.
Surprisingly.
It's a message that is desperately needed, I think, in our world. It's been a very difficult few years for a lot of families. Again, here we're families from Kiev, Ukraine. We're reminded of the faithful who are out in a war-torn country right now.
Right. And a word that Francis used in the Italian, speranza, hope. Hope for families who are trapped in what they think are impossible situations. Hope for the world with good and holy families.
Again, so important. Really grateful the church is gathered here for the 10th World's Meeting of Families. Again, it looks different than past World Meeting of Families. It is smaller. It was delayed a year. And yet, how moving were those testimonies? And I think that is going to give hope to the faithful, to the world, and to be a light to the world, which is so, so critical.
Context is going to be important over the next few days.
Absolutely, and that's why we're here, too. And it's going to be a long few days, but really good. And so grateful to have you both here. So grateful to be here in Rome and grateful for you all. Thank you for watching. And this is really just the start of EWTN's coverage of the 10th World's Meeting of Families. Make sure to tune in tomorrow as we continue our coverage. And if you ever miss any part of it, head over to EWTN's YouTube page. You can catch everything there as well. Go to EWTN.com to find the programming times in your area. And with that, that concludes tonight's coverage of the 10th World's Meeting of Families. But be sure to tune in tomorrow. We'll see you then.